so obsessed with her legacy, and I can so see that in her, that she just screams Saturn to me for a few reasons. And if this is, Saturn in the first house and loosely conjunct the ascendant, that makes so much more sense to me because, uh, first of all, having, if you're doing whole signs, this stellium is in the first house opposing the seventh house, and so it's angular and more powerful. And then also in Cancer, putting her Jupiter Moon conjunction in the seventh house angular makes a lot more sense to me because that's like a signature of extreme eminence and wealth and like good fortune and luck and also her, having her moon in the seventh house makes a ton of sense to me, her Cancer moon, because she's so obsessed with relationships, as she mentions. She said, she spent her whole life trying to, if you are in love, she spent her whole life trying to put love into words, and she's obsessed with it, and it's like her deepest need, you can tell, to like really appreciate love and figure out things about partnership and deeply, deeply wanting that kind of communion. And, you know, referring to relationships as giving the entire, in Antihero, kind of jokingly, she said, I wake up screaming, dreaming you're leaving, and life will lose all its meaning for that last time, and, all of this stuff, and, folklore, and all kinds of stuff about, like, this relationships being this sort of completely, like, guiding light of her life in a way, like, regardless of, you know, who who she's having the relationship with. Obviously, the muse is debatable, but you know, it's really important to her. It's really like she compares her relationship, her love and her inspiration and her muse to the sun, which is like life giving fire and vitality, um, and all of that. So I think that's important that would be in the seventh house, and it could be, and also like for the Scorpio chart, I don't, if you're using whole signs, you can use other signs too, but you other house divisions too. But for whole sign, it doesn't make sense to me that this would be on the third and the ninth, axis, because the third has, I mean, it has to do with neighborhood journeys. It has to do with, sort of things like siblings and, all of that early education and stuff. And then the ninth, there's higher learning, spirituality, philosophy, long journeys. So I really don't see super much spirituality in her music in a way. Um, if a person has a ninth house emphasis, like if she really had a ninth house Jupiter Moon conjunction, she would be like obsessed with the, like religion, and I feel like I would see spirituality come through a lot more in her music, and just her sort of quest for like appreciation of the divine and like travel and like international appreciation and like needing to constantly travel to feed that. And like the moon can tell you a lot where you find your source of comfort and nourishment. And so I don't really feel like we see that. I think that she is interested in like the occult and esoteric stuff, but I don't really see that as much as like her relationships makes a lot more sense to me. So I feel like that would be a lot louder, in her chart. But still, gotta figure it out. And the other thing is, I think that it would make a lot of sense for her to have a 12th house sun, because I feel like there's a lot she has to sort of, compartmentalize about her own like individual personhood versus her brand and her public narrative and what she's telling through her songs. So in a way, she has to always hide like the secret real Taylor. And on top of that, having to often hide her whereabouts because of like stalkers, and having to have security, and having to, hide inside a lot and hide on roofs and just sort of be out of sight, as well as, having to hide her, sexuality or her relationships, given that she uses a lot of queer flagging and queer symbolism in her art, sort of obliquely, hinting at that, or not obliquely, but just using symbolism that not everyone knows to signal that. that's a very like, 12th house struggle, and she talks a lot about, having depression or anxiety or sort of existential despair, and that is also like an extreme 12th house signature. Kind of working through that. And the 12th house is sort of one of those tougher houses because it's technically the blind spot of the ascendant. It's like the thing right behind it that it can't see. So it's sort of a struggle of, I don't know quite who myself is. I know who this big brand is, but she said, I struggle feeling like a real person because, she has this sort of parasocial relationship with fans, so she feels like she can't really be her, true self because she's like worried about how she's perceived, and then like feeds into her family thing of the family being so absorbed in the brand that she's not like her own individual person in a lot of ways. And I think that's compelling to me. Okay. And then the other thing was like, I think it's interesting for her Aquarius Venus to be in the second house and the North Node because, again, that's tying into that need for relationships and need to sort of ponder love. But Aquarius is such an intellectual sign that it's like she's intellectually pondering love. She's intellectually interacting with people in her relationships. And in a way, it's like she wants to be embodied, but in a way, she always goes back to that, idea of the intellectual idea of love, like fantasizing about what a perfect love would be, like she said, fearless. And then also, making all of her money from talking about love.